Forgotten characters. Why Genshin Impact cannot abandon them. I don't know what this video is about. Like I say, I didn't get recommended it or anything. It just popped up on my Genshin home screen by Voss2, and I'm curious. I don't know.
An unfortunate long-term consequence of gacha games is the inevitable oversaturation of its roster, being a genre known for releasing new characters in an ever-expanding pool.
Yeah, just look at Kave, dude. He hasn't been here in well over a year now. How long has it been, actually? It's been a very long time, I think. Is it over a year?
In the absence of balance updates like we see in other games, what ends up happening is eventually there will be a sizable
Oh joy, another AI vid. What do you mean another AI vid? What?
Advancement in either power or capacity between generations of units that ultimately render the old guard obsolete. It's understandable why they go down this path. The primary source of revenue sustained by most gachas is new content, the fancy new toy with the fancy new gimmick that helps you take on the fancy new boss. Financially, they have a clear motive to keep releasing new stuff no matter how much old stuff there is, or no matter how necessary it might be. And as I always like to say, for them to incentivize players to actually go after these new characters, said characters have to present a new mechanic or gameplay element that the player base at large has had either limited or no access to at that.
Which a lot of characters just don't do, I feel like, at the minute. Like, a lot of characters don't really bring new gameplay elements. A lot do as well, don't get me wrong, like Shen Yun did, Farina kinda did. But there's a lot that still just fill the same old, like, DPS role, tank role, whatever.
That point. Or they have to perform current tasks at a greater level of efficiency, hence the two terms feature creep and power creep. After enough time, there becomes a noticeable difference between the new characters and the old, prompting players to, from a practical point of view, discontinue usage of the latter category, either for the sake of necessity or to account for opportunity cost.
I think it makes sense for some characters, such as Arlecchino, Nuvalet, the Archons. I'll be honest, I don't really know if any of the non-Archons or Fatui or Dragons or anything, like the ordinary 5 stars, I guess, have really power creeped any of the older ones, really. And it's not like you can't clear the content with the older 5 stars as well, to be honest. You really, really can.
Genshin's different though.
Power creep's a tough word, because power creep to me means the game is also getting more difficult, which it doesn't really feel like it is. You know? I feel like for power creep to be an actual thing, it's not only the characters that need to get stronger, it's also the game that needs to get harder so that other characters literally are obsolete, which they're just not in Genshin. They're really not.
Unlike the majority of gachas, where players by and large view characters as nothing more than a means to an end, sentimental value and personal attachment towards characters run deep within the community. Questionably so, players are extremely loyal to their respective favorites, even if in relativity they rank among the lower tiers of the meta. Though with Fontaine having given us
Sorry, I love the Luke still, I can't talk.
Our biggest leap in power yet, that divide between the old and the new is getting more conspicuous with every version, leading us to this video. I wanted to have a discussion over
also,
new is getting...
This take is very weird to me, like this comparison specifically. Because Yoimiya and Linny are vastly different units. And honestly, I don't know who technically would do the higher damage per second DPS. Because my Yoimiya, dude, fucking slaps. Like, even with a goated Linny build, if I put Yoimiya's build on Linny, or like vice versa, or a really, really good build on Linny, because I do have one for him, I still feel like my Yoimiya does more damage. But it's also very different playstyles. One's charge attack, one's constant pew pew pew.
Getting more conspicuous with every version. Leading us to this video, I wanted to have a discussion over the uncertain future of old characters and the difficult challenge facing Hoyo in regards to how they can continue releasing new content while preserving the current stuff we already have.
Okay.
Genshin Impact has fundamentally reinvented the gacha genre in ways formerly never attempted, from exclusively mobile titles to the rather simple gameplay formula to something as complex and comprehensive in scope and experience as AAA big box titles. This game has single-handedly elevated the standards and expectations of gacha games, with companies including more voice acting, higher quality artwork and animations, and even expanding more on their marketing and branding to emulate the scale of Genshin. Gachas are no longer...
I will say, dude, for all the people that hate Genshin out there but do love other gacha video games that are similar to Genshin but have like a real big hate boner for Genshin, you've got to at least be appreciative of one thing: how fundamentally good the game is. Because it really has been the backbone for a lot of these other great gacha games like Wuthering Waves and such to build on and take inspiration from. Obviously, Genshin took inspiration from other things, but Genshin's the first gacha game to be as big as it is, dude, and it's fucking huge, and it deserves to be. Like, the game is fantastic at a fundamental level. Obviously, every game has its problems within, but if it wasn't for Genshin, I really don't think a lot of these games would have happened, like Wuthering Waves and stuff. I really don't.
Longer a niche category of gaming like they were in the 2010s, they've officially entered the mainstream. While
Yeah.
Hoyo has deviated off the beaten path with his flagship title, Genshin still adheres to the general idea of gachas, namely in that it
You know, the subtitles are doing a fantastic job for nearly everything Voz has to say,
Continue-
other than the word Genshin.
beaten path with his flagship title, Genshin still adheres to the general idea of gachas, namely in that it continuously releases new content and thus new characters to go along with it, but
Sure.
unlike other games whose new characters and classes are freely obtainable, gachas institute a price tag onto every edition, making
Yes.
players have to consider the cost of acquiring them, which can either be the time or money conducive to including them in their roster. In
Yes, which to be honest,
The
a
cost
lot
of
of video
acquiring
games
them, which
do,
can
just
either
in
be the
very
time or
different
money
ways as well. There's a game that just came out called The First Descendant, chat. I've been playing it for quite a couple of days for a lot of hours, dude. I've been putting some hella time into it. And if you've ever played Warframe, it's kind of similar. So what happens is, imagine this. Genshin is still a free-to-play game. Every character you don't gacha on, you just buy for a pretty fucking expensive amount of money. Let's say $100, maybe more, whatever the maximum price of a 5-star would be. Let's say $200, right? But there are ways to farm the characters in-game. Say, for example, there's 3 really rare materials, and I mean really rare, 0.01% drop rate from bosses and such. For Kazuha, for example, say there's this sword that you need to get, and a maple leaf that you need to get, and a wind element that you need to collect. And when you collect all of those, you can then build the character in-game to like be able to play them. That's basically what these other kind of quote-unquote gacha games are. They're not really gacha because there's no 50-50 chance or anything like that. It's literally either you buy the character for a shit ton of money, or you invest a fuckload of time into the game to be able to find these really rare resources to just create the character. And I think I'm someone who prefers that because at least there is an option of playing the game completely for free and getting every single character, and also playing the game for a long amount of time as well. But it's also very easy to burn out on those kind of games. So it's a weird one, dude. It's just 2 different like time versus money situations. 2 very different ones. It's interesting.
conducive to including them in their roster. In other words, even though Genshin maintains the difficulty ceiling low enough to accommodate a wide selection of characters, they're still forced to play into the notion of new cast members being, in some way, shape, or form, better or more enticing than what players currently have right now, with them finally making an effort to produce
That's okay. Hold on. Let me listen to this again because he's saying this, but also playing Noelle.
their roster. In other words, even though Genshin maintains the difficulty ceiling low enough to accommodate a wide selection of characters, they're
Yes.
still forced to play into the notion of new cast members being, in some way, shape, or form, better or more enticing than what players currently have right now.
I don't think you're really forced to play into the notion, to be honest. Like, I really don't. Because, like, in this team, you could literally just use Noelle, Sing Show. For another Hydro, you could use Barbara and then Dendro Traveler, and you'd be doing the same thing, just a lot less damage. But you would be able to do the boss easily still if you invest enough into the team and the characters. Some of these characters are level 80 right now. You're not really forced to, but sure, it helps, of course. The characters need to have a selling point.
Them finally making an effort to produce new endgame content in recent times, as evident by the new Imaginarium Theater game.
Yep.
Mode, time will tell if that pressure grows. All the
Yeah.
same, though Genshin is a gacha title, it tries its best to stand out as something more, and one way they do that is via characters. Longtime
True.
gacha players can all agree that the rate of new characters being released is considerably slower than most other gachas, who frequently pump out upwards of half a dozen new additions per month.
I'd die and cry and be very upset and annoyed and sad and angry and broke. I think the rate at which Genshin releases new characters is perfectly fine. I think it's perfectly fine.
That's because Hoyo tries to do more than just make new units for the sake of making them.
Yeah.
Every character in Genshin Impact has a story, a background, some kind of personal involvement within the greater mythos of Teyvat. More than just their gameplay and place in the meta, these units have a presence in the world, a personality, a voice actor, an identity.
Yeah.
Every member of the cast, with the exception of this one random person, is
You didn't have to do them like that.
connected with others, which is what gives the game more substance than other gachas where characters
Is there any other playable character in Genshin that doesn't really connect with other characters? Let me think about this. I feel like every single character does to an extent. I feel like there's certain characters that really don't do much, like Sayu, for example. I feel like Sayu's a character that I don't really remember interacting with other players other than us, the Traveler. Now, Mika definitely does. He's got a job with a lot of the other playables and stuff. Hazel, I think. Maybe. Rosaria barely gets pulled out as well. True. No, Fischl definitely fucking does. Fischl and Mona have a lot of, like, friend chemistry and shit. Yeah, I don't know. I agree with that. I think a lot of characters do have a lot of connection with other characters as well.
Random person is
Very
connected
cool.
with others, which is what gives the game
Ayato doesn't have much about him. He has enough with Toma and Ayaka.
more substance than other gachas where characters just exist to be chosen for battle. Essentially, Genshin makes it personal by putting a lot of effort into every character, hence why players are so attached to their favorite units. They have the same level of detail and attention as anime characters, and you know how much us weebs love our waifus and Los Bandos. Be that as it may, this is still a video.
Okay, I don't watch enough anime to know who these characters are, but just based off of this image, is that Nami from One Piece? Yeah, okay.
Bandos.
You know the only reason I know that character is because of Ludwig, and that he simps over.
That as it may, this is still a video game, not a visual novel. While the game tries its best to give equal attention to everyone, they're ultimately a for-profit company. It makes more financial sense to release new characters over giving attention to older ones.
True.
We're almost 4 years into the game, and for better or worse, many of the old units have been fighting against the test of time for a long while now.
I do think one thing they could do, though, is something that they did, for example, with the Luke, right? They can look at the play rate of older characters, see if any of the older characters are getting played quite a bit, and give them cool shit. And I think they'd still be able to make money while also making people more inclined to play the older characters as well.
Remarkably, multiple version 1 units have managed to stay relevant and even dominant this entire time.
Exactly.
Characters like Child, Xingqiu, Shanling, Bennett, Zhongli, and Fischl are still prize picks to this day, despite not having received any particular direct upgrade. Aside from maybe Fischl with Dendro, but she was already one of the best 4-stars in the game.
True.
Additionally, though gachas are not exactly known for giving much attention to old characters buying universal systems, several of them have gotten indirectly buffed with the inclusion of new characters either offering a new playstyle to them or compensating for their inherent flaws. Thanks to Farazan and Xianyun, Shell has experienced a second lease on life, being one of the most effective teams in the game to this day.
Yeah, that is true.
Another member of the Liyue trio, Hu Tao, has repeatedly found ways to prevent herself from falling off through both new units and universal systems. Diluc has become decently strong with the advent of Xianyun, providing
He was already decently strong. He's become even stronger now.
his massive base damage on plunging attacks they use as well. On the support side of things, Jean went from a niche if not average healing support to one of the best in the game courtesy of the Hydro Archon's unique interactions with health manipulation, finally necessitating
Wait, really?
the acting Grandmaster's team-wide healing. I'm saying all this because I don't want to imply that all of the old units are facing the same situation, and it's also to highlight one of the ways in which Hoyo can remedy that very situation. It's true that compared to other gachas,
I wonder how he's going to suggest they could remedy the situation. Because other than the new banner system, which was there for literally a patch, or sorry, half a patch and disappeared, is crazy to me. That really needed more time to cook, dude. Hoyo, if you ever add that system back, you need to leave it for a lot longer, dude. Like, I'm talking at least a whole patch, maybe even 2 or 3. That legacy banner, whatever it was called, that wasn't it. It did not feel very good to see it disappear so quick and see so many people upset about it. It needs more time to cook.
Genshin has done a much better job maintaining the relevance of its older characters, and based on what version 4 has proven, they're making a concerted effort to allow as much of the early generations on board as the game continues to advance in power and feature creep. The sad part is they can't allow all of them. Many of Genshin's old units have been hemorrhaging market share, going from high-value targets to almost entirely non-existent among top or even high-performing teams. It's kind of nostalgic to think about. Back in the day, units like Mona and Eula were some of the best in the game by virtue of their staggering damage output, especially in the realm of single-instance attacks. This was during a time when landing 400, 500Ks was considered an achievement, but nowadays you see people doing that.
I mean, it still is, in all fairness. Like, in an ordinary team, I don't think many people are hitting 400, 500Ks. Against, like, any old boss anyway. Like, most of my teams that I play are hitting maybe 100K to 200K on a normal rate, you know, when they're fully leveled up.
On the regular, it's not quite as impressive as it used to be. Granted, much
But for nukes, it's very different.
of what made them so popular back then was that there was no one else but them. It's easy to believe Mona placed among the top of her class when all she had to contend against was Barbara, Xingqiu, and Child. And bear in mind,
I would argue even back then, Xingqiu was far better than Mona, right? And Child just does a different job.
this was before Child International gained headway and Barbara
Interesting.
found niche use with the Nilou teams.
For
Looking
sure.
at the present day when we have units like Nilou, Kokomi, Farina, Neuvillette, and Yelan, Mona's position within the Hydro cast looks a lot more modest.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Mona is literally just for damage screenshots for sure.
Actually, things have also been spiraling for her. Cryo hasn't been doing all that well since version 3, and being an exclusive
True, and that's kind of sad, dude, because we did get the trailer for Natlan with new Cryo characters in there, and it does make me slightly worried. I really, really hope that, just like with Dendro in Sumeru, we get a couple of new gameplay mechanics, maybe, with the existing elements in the game. I truly feel like it was a very missed opportunity to not have an extra reaction added for every single element in the game when Dendro came out. And I think it'd be very cool to give Geo and Cryo an extra reaction, maybe even Animo as well, with existing elements in the game. I genuinely think it would be a good idea, and then give us even harder content with mechanics and shit to make it feel like the elemental system is actually worth using in the game.
Exclusively freeze-oriented support, by extension that makes Mona not do so well either. It's debatable whether she's even used for Vaporize anymore, what with there being so many better facilitators of that kind of playstyle. Similarly, Eula was also once the belle of the ball. When she came out at 1.5, she was
Eula is a great character also for damage screenshots, but I think other than that, her normal attack physical damage is fine. But if you're playing her with the insight to use her skill and ult, I genuinely feel like her ultimate ability is one of the worst in the game for generally playing the game. The reason I think that is 90% of the time, and that's a made-up statistic that I pulled out of my asshole and threw out of my fucking mouth, but you get the idea. The majority of the time, that ultimate ability is gonna not hurt the enemy for one reason or another. Either the enemy's gonna fly up in the air, it's gonna dig underground, it's gonna gain a shield, it's gonna turn invisible, or what happens most of the fucking time, it's already dead before the ult even goes off. So like, it's good for like early game and it's good in hindsight, but for endgame stuff, it just ain't it, dude.
He was a very strong contender relative to the cast,
It just
but
ain't
once
it.
again, there was hardly much competition to begin with.
True.
Shao, Ganyu, Hu Tao, Child, Kuching, and Diluc, none of
Diluc is always very good competition, actually. He's better.
which had their perfected teams at that point in time.
That's fair. He didn't have his perfected team.
Again though, circumstantially, the physical niche has received virtually no concrete improvements to their
Well, Razor actually got a drastic improvement with the release of Dendro. And I mean a drastic improvement. There is the team that is vehemently known as the Thundering Fury, which is Razor, C6 Bennett, a Dendro character, probably Nahida, I think it is, and what else? Hydra? A Hydra character like Sing Sha Wo Yulan. And what happens is, in Razor's ult, you deal physical damage and electro damage. That was improvement physical, though. Well, he did say physical teams. Well, he said physical characters.
time. Again though, circumstantially, the physical niche has received virtually no
Physical niche. Yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Razor was the physical niche, and then he got brought out of it by Dendro. So it did get an improvement. Again, my point is, Razor was mainly used as a physical character before. Dendro came out. He now has way more opportunity to be used in different teams. In that team, Razor deals physical damage, which is turned into pyro damage by Bennett C6. Also electro damage, which means the blooms that are coming off are doing hyper bloom, burning, burge. It's doing fucking everything, dude. And that shit does so much damage if you build like full EM Razor, dude. It deals so much damage. It's kind of insane.
concrete improvements to their cast pretty much since then, causing Eula to fall off in value greatly over time,
Eula
despite
definitely
still
has.
technically being the strongest physical damage dealer in the game. While
Yeah.
several elements have that one character who can facilitate a hypercarry team, Shunho for Cryo, Farusan for Animo, Kujosada for Electro, and Goto for Geo, the physical element doesn't really have anyone like that, only a few token buffers here and there like Rosaria and Mika. So Eula has been more or less mooching off of universal buffs like Raiden Shogun's Elemental Burst Enhancement or
Yeah, that's
Freeness
fair.
Damage Amp. There are other Day 1 units who may have never really been the best but were serviceable to some extent, certainly enough to make them worth pulling for. These days, however, you'd be hard pressed to find any reason to use them at all. One of the most forgotten characters in Genshin would have to be Albedo. Albedo was always marketed as a jack of all trades, master of none support, having a bit of everything.
I kind of like that about him though. Really? Albedo, one of the most forgotten Genshin characters? Actually.
Across the board and dealing a fair bit of damage himself. He found gainful employment
Oh wait, yeah, he's not a standard character. Bro, in my head I'm like, well, he's a standard character. Bro, he's not. Everybody just wants him to be. Yeah, no, fair.
as a third Geo character for Ito and Goto, supplementing both of them with extra energy
Fair.
and meeting the third Geo
It doesn't
party
get rerun
requirement.
very often.
Outside of that, there were a few niche interactions with them running alongside Zhongli and Hu Tao teams, purely for lack of any alternative, or C4 Albedo running with Shell. But in almost every team where he was usable or okay in, he's been effectively replaced by someone else. Hu Tao discarded him the instant Kasuga came out. Shaw threw him away for Flowerzon, and even within Mono Geo teams, Chiodi is considered a more DPS-oriented quickswapper
Yeah,
for that team.
that's
the main
very
reason
fair.
he used Albedo and Mono Geo was because he was the only viable third Geo character, but now there's someone with a more focused role than him. Albedo was always an okay choice, not the best one, but with every possible team he could fit into gaining more efficient slots, opportunity cost has kicked him out of every situation he could potentially be used
I think
in.
that's really
Klee's
fucking
another
understandable.
example of a character who was, by all accounts, a respectably serviceable unit despite a rather clunky playstyle. Though it wasn't very high profile, she had pretty good success with Mono Pyro throughout versions 2 and 3 if you chose to go that route. The main problem is that Xiangling, Bennett, and Kazuha were high demand units who could be put to better use in other teams, which is why not many people talked about Mono Pyro Klee even though it was actually fine. When Linny came out though, she was completely superseded, executing on Mono Pyro far stronger and more comfortably. Now, Klee's surprisingly high pyro application made her a potential candidate for forward vaporized teams with Furina, but we're running into the same issue again where Furina and by extension the support to pair with her can apply to many characters. I'm pretty sure even Gamin can rival Klee with enough investment, although they are technically in different niches.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's a pretty different niche, but yes, I reckon he probably could.
I'm aware that the likes of Linny, Hu Tao, Gamin and such don't directly compete with Klee because Klee's more of a half carry, half team support kind of character who likes to enable her team, very similar to I guess like Child. Even so, she was still affected somewhat negatively from the resurgence of Pyro in version 4. By no means are the list of old characters endemic to just 5 stars. 4 stars
I need to get Shen Yun.
are troubled by this even more, with characters like Shen Yun, Ningguang, Yanfei, Racer, and so on having basically zero presence in the meta as we know it. It's a strange turn of events. For some old characters, the addition of new units and systems turned out to be a blessing for them, giving characters like Diluc, Jean, Noelle,
You don't have it? No, I didn't get her.
Shao, Keqing, and Hu Tao a second or even a third lease on life. Meanwhile, for other old characters, the addition of new units and systems was the final nail on the coffin, taking away what little semblance of opportunity cost characters like Eula, Albedo, Klee, and Mona had. I do want to clarify that in terms of strength, I'm not saying these 4 are the same. Klee especially is still very strong if you can put up with their gameplay, it's just that in regards to their situations,
clunky,
they're in the same boat. As mentioned at the beginning of the video, power and feature creep were guaranteed to happen. It's an eventual and inevitable outcome for games that periodically release new characters. For other gachas, players are fine with this because characters are just the means to an end, but for Genshin, the thought of units becoming lost to time is much more serious. Hoyo's aware of this. They know that every unit has a loyal fanbase, no matter how small, and so they have to accommodate for that by giving all of them at least some attention. People have been getting frustrated by units like Kaveh not having gotten a rerun. Realistically, there's no benefit to giving him a rerun due to how weak he is, but they have to because of what Genshin represents to its players. Furthermore, they have to ensure that every character, no matter how old,
Bro, fucking no use of giving him a rerun because of how fucking weak he is? Are you insane? Can we talk about the amount of fucking Barbara and Noelle bullshit banners? Jesus. I don't fucking know, man. I don't fucking know.
old or how niche, still has a place where they're either best in slot or good enough.
Why have 2 people now said looks like an AI generated video? What the fuck about this looks like an AI generated video? Do you just mean the captions? The captions pretty much are AI generated. They always have been. The video itself is not.
Everyone else.
The voice? Bro saying bro has an AI voice? His voice is totally normal.
Because of what Genshin represents to its players. Furthermore, they have to ensure that every character, no matter how old or how niche, still has a place where they're either best in slot or good enough to contend with everyone else.
It's a very chill voice, actually.
The moment a character no longer has something to be part of, they become forgotten and neglected.
I mean, what they might mean, not me. No, I know, I get you. I'm just commenting on that. It's definitely not AI.
Everyone else. The moment a character no longer has something to be part of, they become forgotten and neglected, which is bad for a game built upon fostering attachment from character to character and character to player. This will only become more and more difficult to maintain over time, unless they decide to give us a 4-party Spiral Abyss or something ridiculous like that, trying to
God, don't give them ideas. I'm disliking the video.
give every character just enough opportunity cost value becomes impossible at a certain point. But we're not there yet, which brings me to the final topic. How can we give these characters more value again? While not ideal, the most applicable solution would be forced necessity.
Which they kind of started with Imaginarium Theater.
Necessity is a practice of contriving a scenario that explicitly demands a character with a specific playstyle. For example, over in the Game Blue archive, there was a unit named Shizuko who, all things considered, was really freaking garbage.
So this is kind of like Honkai Star Rail, right? There's the form of endgame that basically requires a certain type of character, like Himeko, like follow-up attacks and shit, right? I really don't want Genshin to do that, like where you can only use pyro characters or something.
It was a bad support unit all around. However, for a while at least, Shizuko is actually obligatory for you to perfectly clear one of the raid bosses, Shirokuro, thanks to her.
I will say, if they made a boss that had a shield that could only be destroyed by like Vaporize, that wouldn't be so bad. That wouldn't be so bad.
Ability to summon a cover, Blue Archive's version
Like,
of a
mechanics are
geoconstruct
fine.
essentially, that completely shut down one of the boss's main mechanics. I quit Blue Archive back in spring of 2023, so she likely got officially power crept, but that's an example of what Hoyo can do for Genshin to try and bring some of these units back to relevance.
True.
Honkai already been doing something similar with all of its different game modes and different cycle blessings, necessitating you to have a wide variety of units geared up to handle all the various combat scenarios you come across. Without, say, pure fiction, Herta and Himiko likely would have been lost to time.
True.
Something they could do to make Albedo valuable.
Albedo was, fucking Himeko was pretty shit before that, right? And then she turned into one of the meta standard characters.
For instance, is to create a boss who generates massive earthquakes that deal huge damage, which can only be avoided by being airborne. So Venti's elemental skill letting you hover in the air or wander.
I would be down for that if they gave you a really weak version of the trial character necessary for it. I would be so fucking down for that, dude.
Levitation or Albedo's elevator thingy propping you up above the ground can be counters for that. They can obviously make you look stronger by creating a boss that negates all elemental damage, forcing you to rely on physical attacks to take them out. These hyper-specific scenarios can artificially inflate a character's usability by targeting mechanics that...
Very weak version. Why? Because then they're not going to give you a fucking level 90 giga-powered version so that you'd never pull for the character yourself. Just make sure you give an option to be able to clear the content. Just make it hard.
Only they and maybe a few other units have. Of course, that approach in and of itself has a few drawbacks. New players or free-to-plays who don't have that many characters will find these contrived mechanics extremely unfair and predatory, pressuring them to pull for specific characters that they don't even enjoy playing or using.
Yeah, but again, I think if they give trial characters, then it's absolutely fine.
Just to enable them to clear this one thing. So if they want to go down this route, they'll have to create free-to-play solutions.
I think that's a very good route to go down as long as they give trials.
Again, that's one option they can take. In addition, they can always try to go the indirect buff approach by, say,
Dea's goated though? I thought only the Fatui used delusions.
Making Freeze relevant again for Mona, giving actual physical support for Eula, or finding some random way to make Pyro Catalyst users overpowered. But if and when Genshin's roster reaches triple digits, that becomes untenable as there are too many units to account for while simultaneously pushing the ceiling on a unit's capability. All that's to say, I'm morbidly curious as to what will happen come version 5 and
oh no, he showed Dea on screen? No, I know.
later version 6. I've always championed the notion that no character is unusable, that you could clear all the game's content with even the quote-unquote bottom tier units.
You can.
But I also emphatically stress the idea of opportunity cost. Even if a character is viable, if there's so many stronger, faster, cheaper, efficient, or versatile options out there, at a certain point, bias aside, there's zero reason for a player to want to use the 4th, 5th, or 6th best option.
For the most part, I agree. Yeah, there is still some reasons, but yeah, I for the most part, I agree.
Other gachas, no one really cares if a mid or low tier character gets lost to time. If they're not useful, they're not useful. Simple as that. But Genshin's different. Hoyo cannot abandon anyone no matter how weak they are. If they do, players will become disillusioned. They have to give everyone reruns, they have to give everyone some kind of attention, because that's the kind of game Genshin is. It's all about the characters. If they abandon them, that will actively damage the reputation of the game. What do you guys think? Do you believe there's a solution to keeping all existing units relevant while releasing new characters?
Yes, I do. I think what he said was pretty fucking spot on, to be honest. Just make the end game modes like raids and shit soloable, but also doable in a group with cool mechanics that make you forced to switch out characters and stuff. And make it so that you require certain things, again, like being in the air or, you know, I don't fucking know, dude, either in the air or affected by hydro or like have an effect on you that can only be applied by certain units, maybe have a shield or deal physical damage, deal something like that, but make sure you give a weak version of the trial character necessary to do such thing. That would be the best way to keep all units relevant while releasing new characters, I think. They'd have to give a trial unit.
Implore you to share it in the comments. For now, if you enjoyed the video, a like and subscribe would be very much appreciated. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at Varsfarum, join my Discord server, and check out my other discussion videos if you haven't yet. But
that was a fantastic video. Dude has a very calming voice, very good takes there, very informative as well. I thought that was a fantastic video. I really did. What did you think, chat?